Hi there, Steve Perryman here. Hope you're all well, keeping safe and healthy. So it's been flagged up to me that on April the 5th, which is Sunday, it will be 48 years since a momentous game against AC Milan, first leg of the UEFA Cup semi-final. And I managed to score 2 goals in that particular game to help us get a 2-1 win. So it was obviously a very big game for me. And so the fact that it's been flagged up, I've been looking at the facts and figures behind that game. We'd obviously qualified for the UEFA Cup by winning the League Cup at Wembley the season before, beating Aston Villa. And that qualified us for the UEFA Cup. So we'd won through to the semi-final, playing the famous AC Milan. And looking through the facts and figures, unbelievably, this was our fourth game in 6 days, which is a hell of a schedule to have. And because of that fact, the club had got a lot of injuries, too many injuries, as you can imagine. So I think that was the reason why Bill Nick went and got Alan Mullery back from Fulham, where he'd been on loan. Even an hour before the game, I think there was doubts about whether Alan actually was allowed to play, and it was passed by the authorities that he could. So it was very good management by Bill Nicholson. It was John Pratt who got his nose broken in the previous game, league game at Ipswich on the 3rd. Remember, this was the 5th, so this is only 2 days later. And John obviously couldn't play in that game against AC Milan. So we went into the game, a lot of a heavy schedule of fixtures, a blowy night, but turned into one of the special nights at White Hart Lane in Europe, because we eventually got the victory. It was a hard-fought victory. We actually went a goal down in the first half to a player that was called Benetti. I think played for Italy at the time, Italian international, and he was his nickname in Italy was the Englishman because he played in an English style, and so he was like a defensive midfield player. About 20 minutes into the game, he broke from midfield onto a loose ball and smashed it in the top corner, and you had to be some special strike to beat Pat Jennings. So the problem with that being that in that era, if you went a goal down, the famous away goal to the Italians, then it was very difficult to get it back because they defended for their lives, they defended in numbers, and it was a very difficult proposition. And we had a very good team. We had a lot of power in the team, a lot of height, long throws from Martin Chivers, near post corners for flick-ons, people like Martin Peters, Mike England, etc. So we had a lot of power, Alan Gilzine, and we of course give them a lot of pressure, but they, as I said, put their bodies on the line and defended for their lives. And the closer you got to their goal, they were going to protect that goal line. And even if it was sort of 7, 8, 9 players in the 6-yard box, they were going to, if we were going to score, it was going to be over their dead bodies. So just before half time, a ball broke to the edge of the box. I think I called Martin Peters to let it run. And I came from my sort of defensive midfield position, which is where I played, and crashed this ball again into the top corner. So 2 very good goals. Unusually, in a game of that quality, not from the people, the forwards, a lot of quality forwards on the pitch. and therefore 2 goals, one for them, one for us, from players that were not really expected to score. They had other priorities in their game. I mentioned that I was a defensive midfield player, so of course the team could not rely on me goal scoring. But it turned out in the second half, a lot of pressure from us, trying to seek the winning goal. You can imagine going to Italy for a second leg semi-final with just a 1-1 draw. Therefore, if it had been 0-0 in Italy, they would have gone through on the away goal. So it was vital that we got a goal. I think my second goal was helped by the fact that they had a red card, and therefore we're down to 10 men and created more pressure, but more resolute defending from the Italians. And eventually this corner comes in, gets headed out, and I'm not in a defensive sort of position, not far back as the halfway line, for instance, but not on the edge of the box either. So I took this ball out the air, had a nice touch, it bounced up, and I volleyed this ball, and it went in the bottom right-hand corner, goalkeeper's right-hand corner, which was probably the only place where I could have scored. Did I aim for that corner? No, I didn't. I just wanted to get a good strike on the ball. And to prove this was my game, and I can't say that about many games, but I can do it about this one. It turned out to be the winning goal, and the fact that we went and got a 1-1 draw in the San Siro about a week later meant that that goal I just described was the winning goal of the tie. So a couple of things happened. It was not live on telly, but highlights were on television, late night viewing for any Spurs supporters who weren't at the game. So I suppose I'd elevated myself up in front of a TV audience as a young player playing for Spurs, homegrown. They'd probably heard my name by then because I'd been in the team since I was 17, and now I'm probably in my third full season. So as ever, you get to the dressing room and you're all elated. You're wondering if the 2-1 scoreline is going to be enough to carry us through the tie and get us to the final. And like normal, I used to take forever to sit down and contemplate or rest or get my breath back. And most players are in, they have a couple of minutes sat down, and then they're in the bathroom and wash and shower and bathe, and after 5 more minutes they're out and dried off and get dressed and go. And I think everyone had gone by the time I started to take my match kit off. And so it calmed down by this time. There was no shouting, no screaming, no celebrations. A real time for reflection, which is what I did when I was in the bathroom, at the shower or bath or whatever. And then I come out and dried off, and I've realised there was a bit of a hullabaloo going on outside the changing rooms, particularly in the car park, where press would have been waiting, and maybe they were waiting for me, having scored the 2 goals. So I decided to go into the treatment room, and again, nobody was in there. It's the quietest place probably in the whole stadium. 4 beds in there. Nobody on a bed. The medical staff had gone home, and half lights. So it really was a good place to sort of contemplate what had just happened, and probably selfishly, and I don't think I was ever a selfish player, but probably that night selfishly I was thinking, how well I'd done to score the 2 goals. And some people would say Steve Perryman was lucky to get 2 shots a game, let alone score twice. So I'm there, as I say, thinking about what had happened, and in a way also trying to stay out of the way of the press, because it's very easy for a young player to go out and make some crass comment off the back of their questions. And so it was no hardship for me to to lay on this bed quietly. All of a sudden, the door flew open. It was Brian Curtin, our doctor, and he didn't say anything to me. He just walked over to the basin. He washed his hands, dried them, looked in the mirror, straightened his tie up, and said to the mirror, as if he was talking to himself, "That Bill Nicholson is an absolute genius." So, of course, I've heard this comment, and I'm the only other person in that treatment room. So I said, "So why is that, Doc?" And he turned around and pointed to me and said, "Because Bill very, very nearly left you out tonight." So you can imagine, from being sort of on the ceiling with thinking about the 2 goals and how well I'd played and how I'd made the difference for once in my life, to being told that, you know, the manager had very nearly left me out of the selection that evening. So it certainly brought me back down to earth with a crash. So I've always wondered up to today that, you know, whether that was some sort of amateur Irish psychology, or whether actually Bill Nick told the doctor, Brian Curtin, to come in and sort of bring me down a peg or two. I don't think I was a person or of character that needed that type of thing. But I tend to think it was the doctor's own sort of, as I say, amateur psychology, to bring me back down to earth. The other feature of, I told you we went to Milan about a week later and got a 1-1 draw. Alan Mullery scored, so what a great decision by Bill Nick to bring him back from Fulham, and eventually scored the winning goal against Wolves in the final. He scored after about 7 minutes. I think Rivera, their very famous pin-up boy, Italian international, I think he scored around about 70 minutes, a penalty. And Bill Nick brought John Pratt back into the team. Remember, I told you for the first game he had a broken nose. Well, obviously it had fixed itself. And Bill Nick left Gilly out for that game. I suppose he was sort of packing the midfield, expecting a bit of an onslaught from the Italians. And so it was a point of hanging on, because if they'd scored, they equalised, as I said. If they'd scored again, that would have been 2-1 in both games, and therefore would have gone to extra time, and I don't think that would have been too pretty, with the sort of passion of the crowd and the noise of the crowd in the San Siro. But a funny thing happened when we checked into the hotel. Well, it wasn't a hotel. It was the Inter Milan's training ground, where we stayed before the game. The game in London had been live on television in Italy, and therefore the staff that worked at the Inter Milan training ground stroke hotel complex had seen me score the 2 goals, and they obviously didn't know me, but they probably thought that I was a regular goal scorer. So when we were all checking in, they kept asking, "Where's Perryman? Who's Perryman?" And this was very unusual for me because I was the young man in the group. I was probably the only player that wasn't an international player. I'd come up through the ranks. And so for a couple of days, I sort of lived off the back of that I was famous off the back of these 2 goals. So it was a wonderful experience for me. It was good for me to know what a match winner could feel like. It's probably the only time I had that feeling. Other games where I would have scored 1 and we maybe won the game, but this special night of everyone talks about the European nights at White Hart Lane, the crowd, full house, the fact that we went a goal down and we ended up winning 2-1 and eventually won the tie. made it such an important occasion for my own game, my own confidence, and my stature within that team, because I was the young player. So all in all, a great night, a fantastic experience to play against such great international players. Snellinger, of the German, played for AC Milan, centre back, and Rivera and Benetti and people like this. I think Cudicini's father was in goal for them that night. So they were a proper football team, and I suppose it could be said that my two goals made a difference, which didn't normally happen. So thank you for listening. Been Steve Perryman, and hopefully we can talk again. See you later. Bye bye.